Hello, you crazy kids. There is no law that says we can't do old stuff first. So we're starting with old stuff, and not only old stuff, vintage stuff. And the term vintage this time is used properly because this is the best season, as far as I was concerned, for toy manufacturers and for the mint. You also get the added bonus of vintage within vintage. These are cast iron horses. That one there's broken, so I'm not going to touch it because it comes into like 3 pieces. And guess who broke it? Anyway, my grandmother on my dad's side gave these to me. It's one of the few things I have from her. She got them when she was a little girl. I was pretty young when she gave those to me. They're banks. A little slot here in the back. Cast iron, built to last, made in America. This is better than your local bank and trust because not only do you have to get a screwdriver, you have to get a straight slot screwdriver to get in them. How many kids can do that nowadays? Put money in here and be in there forever. So in here we have all kinds of a few little goodies. Got the original, I'll show you close up here in just a bit. Buffalo nickels, are commonly called buffalo nickels. Now before they plastered Abe Lincoln's face all over the penny, had what they called Indian headed pennies. Looked like, can we see that? Barely. Looked like that. And the funny part of that is, it's not an Indian. It was the engraver's daughter, white as a snowflake, came in, sat down, put the headdress on. He carved it up for the blanks to put in the presses to make the penny. You can look at her and tell she's not going to be a charter member of the Cherokee Casino. This is 1862. That's the Civil War. The neat part about coins is that you don't know who may have owned them or who may have touched them or what they may have bought. This one is from World War II. They made these for a limited time some out of zinc and some out of steel. This is a steel one. Because of the copper shortage, they were making bullets for the war and pressed pennies out of zinc and steel. Wheat back. So people would say, well, that's no good. Why do you want a steel penny? That's not worth anything. Well, the pennies we have now aren't worth anything. They have a copper plating on them. That's it. Before White Girl in the headdress, and they only made these for 3 years, I think 56, 57, and 58. They look like this. That's the front. Pretty worn out. This is an 1858. That's going to be tough to see. That's the back. Pretty worn. They get pretty expensive in any kind of decent condition. Here's an 1857. Same back. An interesting fact about banking, before all the laws and all the uniformity and everything, anybody could open a bank anywhere. I have the Time Life Old West series, you know, those old leather-bound books. There's a whole series of books that talked about the gold rush and the 49ers and the loggers, the cattlemen, and so on and so forth. And I remember stumbling across a thing about San Francisco gold rush. And people were coming from everywhere, you know, gold. This one gentleman happened to write it down in a diary, and the prices of everything, an egg, a single egg then, was $2. And we're talking 1849 here. So obviously the prices of shovels and the sieves and the materials that you would need to pan for gold were just unbelievable. And then the smart people opened restaurants and they sold tools. They weren't out wading in cold streams hoping to come across some gold. They were selling merchandise to those who were fool enough to do the dirty work. This one gentleman, he rented a storefront. I don't remember if he used paint or shoe polish or something, but he wrote on the glass window, bank, and open for business. And he wrote in his notes that the first day he got a deposit for $100. The second day he got a deposit for $55, and he said by the third day I had enough confidence I put in $10 myself. Here's one of today's pennies after it's been squashed by a freight train. Did that myself. I'm sure that's some kind of federal violation. I hope so. Worth whatever the promise is behind it. Borrowed into existence ain't worth a hill of beans. Alright, I wanted to show you this. This was my first attempt at dovetail joints. I made a little dustpan. This was several months ago that I made this. But it came out just horribly. I mean, this is like a cross between a 6th grade Boy Scout project for the blind and a rabid beaver. But you can see they're off, they're terrible. It was the first time I'd ever done it. There's gaps. I mean, it's horrific. It's horrible. It does work as it's intended. You sweep the stuff up and pick it up. And I made it out of walnut sides and hardboard top and bottom. And these are just 2x4s basically ripped down, turned into finials with a through tenon right here. And so I would grade this as a D- at best. Probably, I give it the D- because it does work as it's intended. But I love it, and here's why. It was the first time I ever did it, and I learned so much about it. And what I learned was, first of all, you need sharp chisels to cut dovetails. And I didn't have any sharp chisels. I went out and bought a set of default, not the best chisels in the world, but not the worst either. Before this, I had like the $6 Harbor Freight chisels, which are fine, it turns out. But what I learned is these have got to be sharp, and they don't come sharp. We think they come sharp. See, that's kind of the beauty of all of this. That's why, in a certain way, that duster thing I made, was a D or an F, but it was also an A. I learned a lot doing that. There's a certain percentage of failure that is healthy, I believe. Not too much, but a certain percentage, as long as you're learning something from it. And like I said, what I learned is you have to have sharp chisels to do dovetails. You just have to. These are not like a fine woodworker that makes $5,000 dressers and stuff would probably laugh at these. I mean, there are chisels that cost $100 a piece. They're not for me. These will work just fine. A cheap Harbor Freight type set of chisels will work for what you're doing, but they've got to be sharp. These do not come sharp. They're sharp enough to cut you, but they're not sharp enough for fine woodworking, and they're not sharp enough to make dovetails in a hardwood such as walnut, but really any wood. They're just not sharp. They're like 250 grit. What we've got to do is get these sharp. What I've got to do, I'm bringing you all along, and this is like the poor man's method of sharpening. And I saw this gentleman named Paul Sellers has an excellent YouTube channel. The man has 30 plus years of woodworking experience, and you and I can get it for free just by watching. It's just a thing of beauty. Mr. Sellers is an excellent craftsman, and he's a little bit of a poet. He'll be working on wood, maybe planing something and then stop, and and talks about the smell of the wood. And I follow him on Facebook, and some of the things he writes are just, he's a little bit of a poet along with being an excellent craftsman. Anyway, I saw this on his channel, credit where credit is due. I'm ripping him off totally, but it's incredibly handy. And it's on the cheap. You're talking about sandpaper, anything hard, a piece of granite countertop would work, a piece of glass. I made one initially out of plexiglass that I got for free, and just a little adhesive and different grits of sandpaper. And then I thought, well, my plexiglass, it has some flex in it. Would probably do a little better. So I was holding out. I didn't want to spend any money on glass, and I didn't have, I spent $2. And I got 4 pieces of this glass. It's thicker than normal glass. This is about 3/16 or so. I think normal is just under an eighth. But and it's got beveled sides, so it was for a coffee table or something. Perfect for what I want to do. We're gold, baby. We're going to set this up here. We may not get to the sharpening today, but show you what it's all about, and credit to Mr. Sellers. Fantastic job, and it works. And I know it works. These come about 250 grit, which is sharp, but it's not sharp enough for fine woodworking. Mr. Sellers' method has sandpaper. It grits, and you can be around here. It doesn't have to be exact. Grits of 250, 400, 600, 800, 1200, 1500. Beyond that, you know, how sharp is sharp. You get up around 800, you're plenty sharp enough to do any kind of woodworking you would want to do with a chisel. Where do you get this sandpaper? I got mine off of Amazon because the big box stores don't have it. They go to about 600 at best. Amazon, maybe $6. I got a whole package of these that vary in grit from 240 clear up to 3000. And I've used quite a bit of it. This was like $6. We had some technical difficulties. What I've done here is use some spray silicone. You can get a China Mart or wherever. Sprayed the back of these varying grits of sandpaper and then adhered them to the glass. Hopefully when I weigh this down it will stick back. And we've got 3 little pieces here, and some of this drawer shelf liner, cabinet liner, whatever, and that will keep you from sliding around. What the technical difficulties tell me is that I've probably lost your attention by now anyway. But we are gonna, next time around, we'll get to sharpening and get into the nuts and bolts of it. This is prep stuff. It's got to be done. It does work, and it works on the cheap. So we're going to get to that next time around. I thank you kindly for watching. I hope you have a great day.